This was such a weird reading week. I had the hardest time concentrating. I got through one physical book. I did manage to read 3 audiobooks, but it was just a very mixed week. The physical book I read this week was a thriller, The Only Survivors by Megan Miranda. So in this book, 10 years ago, 2 vanfuls of students crashed over a ravine. Unfortunately, most of the students passed away. A year later, one of the survivors took their own life. And so a year after that, the remaining survivors decided that they are going to gather together every year. They're going to rent a beach house in the Outer Banks to commemorate the event and support one another. But something is different this year. The vibes are off. The woman who organizes the event every year also just keeps slipping away. No one knows where she's going to, but then she finally disappears. A big storm is rolling in. It's going to shut everything down. And surely she would not make them worry after everything they've been through, right? This one is great for people who liked locked room mysteries. There were some really fun twists and turns. I also really like the timeline. It's 7 hours in the past and 7 days in the present time. So that was really fun. I love those stories where it's like something shady happened in the past and now it's coming up to catch up to you. So that was really great too. There were a lot of characters in this one. By the time I really get to the thick of the story, there are only 7, but I did have a little bit of trouble keeping track of who was who. I also struggled to really get into the story. I think maybe because this one is set during the summer, it's at the beach, and it's winter, it's cold, it's snowy, so I don't think it was the right time of year for me to read this, but I had a fun time. I think if you're looking for books to add to your TBR for next summer, I would definitely recommend adding this one. The first audiobook I listened to was Royal Holiday by Jasmine Guillory. It's just a fun, fluffy, short romance. Vivian, a woman who's in her 50s, is invited on her daughter Maddie's work trip to England. She's going to be a stylist and a guest of the Duke and Duchess, and she's going to be staying with them at the estate. And while there, Vivian meets Malcolm, who is the royal secretary to the Queen. He's worked for the Queen for his whole adult life, and the two meet and develop a very cute banter and fall for each other. And it's just a fun, fluffy romance. It just was like the perfect book I needed. I had read a heavy book before that, and I wanted something fun and light, and Jasmine Guillory is just great for that. And then for some reason, after reading a fun, fluffy, light romance, I decided to go into some nonfiction, and heavy nonfiction at that, with Men Who Hate Women by Laura Bates. This is all about the manosphere, all the different ways men fall into it, the different types of men who exist within the manosphere, and it was one of the most challenging reads I've ever read. I almost DNF'd it so many different times because it was so difficult to stomach just the amount of hatred that some men have for women, like the obsessiveness of it too. It was very, very difficult to stomach, and I don't know why I chose this week of all weeks to listen to this book. It's a very important topic. I would recommend listening to it if it is a book that interests you. It's an important topic to talk about, of course, but I don't think I should have done it this week. It was really difficult to get through. Audiobook I listened to was The House of My Mother by Sherry Franke. I had never watched 8 Passengers. I don't watch family channels, but when the story broke, my heart broke for what these kids went through. It was so difficult, and I love that Sherry got a chance to write her own book and tell her own story. She narrated the audiobook, and I love when an author of a memoir narrates their own audiobook. She pulled a lot from her journal. I thought it was really well done, well put together. The story is absolutely heartbreaking, but I love the courage that Sherry has found. I grew up in a really conservative evangelical family. I'm not a part of any of that anymore, but a lot of Sherry's story also resonated with me and with my background, and I found myself really connecting to the material. I think if you are someone who's ex-evangelical, or you've left some kind of fundamentalist religion, or you had a bad experience with it, you may also really resonate with this story. But ultimately, I love that she got to find her voice and tell her story, and I hope that she and her family find as much peace as they can moving forward. As for what I'm currently reading, I'm listening to an audiobook of Not Another Love Song by Julie Soto. I've also slowly been working my way through The Teller of Small Fortunes. This is a cozy fantasy. And I'm also working my way through an e-arc of Nobody in Particular by Sophie Gonzalez. This is a YA contemporary with royals, boarding school, and it's sapphic. So I'm enjoying all 3 of those so far. So hopefully I will have more books next week.